passport. So you can, go to your state's DMV website, see what you need and when you need it. But also, I'll say if you don't have travel plans, it is worth noting that a real ID is not needed for driving or voting, at least right now. So if you still have a non-real ID license, you're good for those activities. And real IDs are primarily for travel and entering federal facilities. But yeah, consider this your DeFranco PSA so you don't end up being the angry asshole at the airport getting turned away. But then, next up today, for your daily dose of good news, we should talk about Tyler Soden, who you probably don't know. Because Tyler's this 16-year-old kid who lives in Cleveland, Ohio. Then recently, Tyler was at home playing a game when he heard screaming coming from down the block. And it turns out that one of his neighbor's houses was on fire, and a mother and her 3 children, a 12-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-month-old, they were stuck on the roof. Right in the video, you can see smoke billowing from the window behind them, and so Tyler, he springs into action. He goes and grabs a ladder, he hauls it to the house on fire, and he sets it up against the roof over the porch, with the men carrying the baby carefully down the ladder before handing her off to some bystanders while he then helped the young boy and the mother down off the roof. And this reportedly is the 12-year-old was on the back porch and jumped off the roof himself. And with all this, we had Tyler saying in an interview,
I don't even know what was going through my head, to be honest with you. I just grabbed a ladder and ran. I jumped off my garage, so, yeah.
I'm going to say this to you, you probably heard it already. You know you're a hero, right?
I guess.
Right after everyone was out and off the building, firefighters and police rolled up with a couple of officers rescuing an elderly couple and a dog in a second home impacted by the fire. And so as of right now, we don't know what caused the fire, but we do know that it caused over $170,000 in damage. We also know, thankfully, that there were no reported injuries and the firefighters got a handle on the blaze. But it's also reportedly assisting the family that Tyler rescued since they've been displaced. While we wait to learn more, the last thing that we know without a doubt is that Tyler is our BAMF of the day. The kid did good. But then, finally today, let's talk about y'all's comments on yesterday's show and some commentary brought to you by beautifulbastards.com, where right now you can get any of this year's bestsellers for 15% off and then the magnetic code GDSOT. Grab yourself a weed. People are so thrilled over it. Tea or hoodie. God is testing me in our music study. Clearly thriving, silly goose in this economy and all of this goodness. And how that code is in this economy and all of this goodness. And how that code even pairs with stuff we have discounted, like at 50% off, like our 3-pack of core teas, our candles, and so much more. But yeah, definitely check it out, all at beautifulbastard.com. Links in the description. But like I said, let's talk about those comments. Right in those comments, even though yesterday was a just dumpster fire of news, a lot of the comments were actually about the positive stories. For example, Jay is sharing their experience saying, I work at AT&T and several months ago I was helping a woman in her early 90s. I noticed she didn't have a discount on her account. I ran a couple of options, last week's military, and she said yes. Despite knowing women served, I was a little surprised. I asked what she did, and she replied, I built ships in Sausalito. I responded with, you're a Rosie the Riveter. Her eyes lit up and she proudly smiled and said, yes, I was. It was so cool and an honor. But then others sharing their stories about family members who were connected directly or even kind of parallel. Like Tanner, who said, the Rosie the Riveter story is so amazing and it almost brought me to tears out of happiness to hear these women who paved the way for me as a federal employee to do my job. My grandmother worked on the Challenger and Apollo missions, and there are so many things so many great women have done that no one sees, and it's beautiful that you're showing it. Then also, in addition to that, in the comments, you had a lot of people giving Cory Booker his flowers. And then around the news of Elon Musk failing to essentially buy an election in Wisconsin, you had people sharing things like, as someone living in Wisconsin, it was Elon. I was going to vote for Crawford regardless, but a lot of Republicans I know also refused to let Elon get away with this. But then finally, of course, there were conversations and comments around the tariffs. For example, Danny Spaghetti saying, the mindset of hurry and break shit so it's done reminds me of what my drill sergeant always says. Slow is fast and fast is slow. If you take your time to do it right the first time, you won't have to go back to fix all the mistakes. Along with the worst part about tariffs is that even if the next president completely eliminates all of them, prices won't return to current levels. And saying corporations will do the same thing they did during COVID. Raise things 10% and reduce prices, and then once the crisis is over, only drop them 5% and keep the rest as increased profit. So there you had some replying saying, I would be more concerned about losing markets completely. If tariffs were removed, would Canada buy American again? No. Would a bourbon drinker switch back to American bourbon? No. People don't forget when you F them over. For now, we're going to have to wait to see how this plays out. Like we even talked about today, there's a number of things happening on so many different fronts. I am hoping for the best, but I'm preparing for the worst. But that, my friends, is the end of your Thursday evening, Friday morning dive into the news. And of course, remember, while next week's going to be a little bit different, I still got you covered. Again, 1, follow me on any and all these socials. That's where you're going to be getting any of the breaking news. And then 2, right here on this channel, you'll be getting a brand new Philip DeFranco show every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for watching. I love your faces, and I'll see you right back here on Monday.
To this day, the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life is what's currently going on in Gaza. Just every horrific aspect of humanity is on full display. Right? I don't know about you guys, but there was a time when I naively thought, even though I know human beings are still colossally flawed, even though we have massive issues, I really naively thought that, Nazi-level atrocities, largely a thing of the past. right? Like we've at least graduated beyond the most horrific base instincts. And that it's just not true. It's just, we are witnessing something very similar today. And so Israel is really at the point of no return. And we're living through incredibly dark chapter in history. So let me walk
Those freaks and their goddamn
only
mustaches
3%
again.
of Jewish Israelis are morally opposed to the Trump Netanyahu plan to depopulate Gaza. That's ethnic cleansing. 14% consider it a distraction. More than 80% of Jewish Israelis support the forced removal of Arabs from Gaza. 80% in Israel are openly supporting ethnic cleansing, stealing land from the people who own it, who are supposed to have sovereignty. Only 3% are morally opposed. Could you imagine a poll coming out of the U.S.? Let's say Trump is actively deploying the military to steal Greenland, right? And they do a poll in the U.S., and only 3% of Americans say, yeah, I'm opposed to this. And 80% say, I love this. Could you imagine, honestly, and this is not to suck off America,
Another
we have
door
massive
without
problems in
lock.
our own respect, and
Where's
in
the
some ways
relay,
it's just as
Charles?
bad. We're already
I
funding
didn't see
the
anything
genocide
on the
government.
walls.
But the polls I've seen are anywhere from 26% to 33% of Americans say, I support stealing Greenland. That's still way too high, but it ain't no fucking 80%. Now, is it? Only 3% are
What's the point of this fucking
Guys,
maze
at the same
anyway?
time, how many
The
hospitals
magnetic
have we
shock
seen bombed? How many
absorption
schools have
system
we
was
seen
developed
bombed?
by
How many kids have we
scientists
seen
from
murdered?
Kiev Polytechnic
And only
University.
3%
It's a
are
very
morally
complex and
opposed to
comprehensive
depopulating
device
Gaza,
that
which
alters
is
its
just a PC way of
configuration
saying
according
ethnically
to the
cleanse
situation.
So
area
it's
and
plan
steal
B
it.
in case of a natural disaster.
Among other
Point of no
things.
return.
But it
In
is
fact, they're
first
already
and
gone.
foremost a
They're already
trial
gone.
run of the
So we
magnetic
just
shock
got the
absorption
Palestinian
system.
journalist Mohammed
Here, under Earth
Saleh
conditions, the system will be
al-Badawi,
perfected
his
so
wife
that
and
it
their
can be
3 children have been
deployed.
killed in an Israeli airstrike on
Science
their
is
home
power.
in Khan
There's no
Yunis.
denying it.
Al-Badawi
We still need to find a way
was
past all these
broadcaster for
goddamn
Al-Aqsa Radio,
magnets.
a major Palestinian media outlet that provides news, religious programming, and political content. The station has been repeatedly targeted by Israeli airstrikes. His killing follows a pattern of Israeli attacks on Palestinian journalists, many of whom have been targeted in their homes alongside their families. Every single day, you get another story about kids being killed, or journalists being killed, or the starvation campaign being ramped up. So on the journalist front, look at this. The number of journalists and media workers killed per war. The Gaza war is #1 in history by a mile. In fact, Israel has killed more journalists than World War I and World War II combined. And in fact, they've killed more journalists than World War I and World War II and the war in Afghanistan combined. You want to know why, guys? They are purposely targeting journalists. They don't allow in foreign journalists into Gaza, so it's Palestinians who are in Gaza who have to get the word out, and Israel doesn't want them getting the word out of the atrocities that they're inflicting on them. And so they purposely kill journalists. It's been going on. How many examples have we already covered on this show? There was an Al Jazeera journalist who was murdered, right? We had that fucking video of the aftermath of it. And again, 232. I believe that's the number, 232. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable. Israeli troops killed 15 Palestinian medics and buried them in a mass grave, the UN says. So they killed the paramedics, put them in bulldozed them, put them in a mass grave. They were effectively trying to hide the fact that they just massacred 15 Palestinian medics. So understand, there is no one safe in Gaza, and there is nobody safe in Gaza. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're a paramedic, doesn't matter if you're a nurse, doesn't matter if you're a doctor, doesn't matter if you're a teacher, doesn't matter if you're a journalist, doesn't matter if you're the average Joe or average Jane. None of it matters. They view you as guilty. They view you as equal to not only Hamas, but the Hamas people who killed them on October 7th. That's why you hear all these flat-out genocidal quotes from top Israeli government officials, where Benjamin Netanyahu is citing Amalek from the Bible, where kill their women, kill their children, kill their animals. Right? You have Yoav Gallant saying these are human animals, and we're going to treat them as such. We're gonna do total siege: no food, no fuel, no water, no electricity. How many? There's people say this all the time on Twitter that if you click translate on a Hebrew tweet, it's a law of nature that it will sound like a passage in Mein Kampf. And I have to say, that is my experience. That is my experience. That sounds crazy, but then you look at the numbers, and only 3% say they're against ethnic cleansing, It's like, oh, yeah, it makes sense, right? Ready for this? So the food situation in Gaza is it's been engineered to starve. Now, at times, they've done the total siege, the food, no fuel, no water, no electricity, but then with international pressure and some temporary pauses in the genocide, the international community was able to get in a certain amount of food and water. Well, now, Israel decided, we're not fucking around anymore. We're going all the way. Right, so here we go. This guy, I believe, is from the UN Food, the World Food Program, and he spoke to Channel 4. And listen to what he has to say.
What you face is real food scarcity. And what we are afraid is that a number of goods manage to come during the ceasefire, but very quickly these stocks are being depleted. This is the longest period of closure since the start of this war, practically 17 months ago. So the challenge that we have, we look forward, we have perhaps 1 to 2 days to continue to support 19 bakeries. We have provided our last food parcels to population. It will last for a week. So that's really the fear currently in Gaza.
But there is a real prospect that this blockade of aid on Gaza goes on indefinitely. There's no end in sight.
And that's exactly why we need to continue to plead. So we do end this closure, that aid needs to enter into Gaza. That's why it's so important that for your viewers, for us in terms of United Nations and from the World Food Program, we are raising the fact that we are running short of food, that the situation could again be dire, and then we face again key challenges related to hunger into the Gaza Strip.
So this guy has to go to the media to beg to lift the blockade and get more food in there. Because according to him, there's a week left of food in there. I've seen numbers as low as 1 to 2 days left of food. I've seen numbers as high as 10 days left of food. But after that, there just is no more food. There's no more food. And so the point would be to starve them to death. That's the point.
Whose mind are you going to change? Because President Trump has given Israel his full support. There's no sign at all that he's going to change his mind. What happens then?
This is exactly why we need to continue to have the peace. There are mediators that are an ongoing negotiation are still happening in Doha. This is why we need to continue to focus on the needs of the population, be the voice of the civilians that are on the ground, remind also the protection of the humanitarian so we are able to do our job. And that's why we continue to do this plea for the population that are living here.
We've heard these pleas and their urgency. Is there any sign at all that Donald Trump hears them?
From our end, this is why we continue to advocate to all the different actors, the one that you did mention, but also the mediators. The population that are in Gaza do require, from a regional perspective, from the international community, that their voice is being heard. And that's why we're talking today.
Remember when they made a big deal about how there's tunnels into Gaza and they use it to bring weapons in? You know what else they use it to bring in? Food. And I'm happy they fucking have them. I hope they still have a bunch of them, because if they don't, they're gonna fucking starve to death. And that's what Israel wants. That's what they want. We're talking about less than 10 days left of food for nearly 2 million people. How many have already died from starvation and malnutrition? How many have died from preventable diseases because they're living in squalor? How many tent cities have been lost by Israel knowing
What the hell does Molotov have against Dr. Sechenov? Why do you have to cook this commission up 2 days before the launch of Collective? Everything's ready.
Exactly, because everything's ready.
What do you mean?
Hospitals.
Are you trying to say that Molotov and his commission want to steal the fruits of Sechenov's labor 2 days before the launch?
The malfunction patrol
And then, by the way, by the time we got to like the third hospital bomb, they stopped even bothering to try to do propaganda. They're just like, yeah, we did it, and what are you going to do about it? Fucking nothing.
The polymerization of the Soviet
What's the boss got to do with it? This is all Petrov's fault. He's the one who made the robots turn the facility into a heap of corpses.
I'm afraid Comrade Molotov doesn't care how many victims there are. But neither does Comrade Sechenov.
No civilians got killed, and
What the fuck
actually
are you
all of them
talking
were
about,
from
Glove? The boss is doing everything he can to fix this.
dumb
Be
enough
precise, Comrade Major.
to believe that
It's you
propaganda.
doing
And I'm
everything
not
you
even
can
that
to
serious.
fix
I don't know.
this.
Maybe
Not
some of you
Dr.
don't know
Sechenov.
enough. I doubt
He's
it.
the one who sent me
34
here.
hospitals.
But
I'm
why
sure
did
there's
he
a
do that?
reasonable
Think
explanation
about it
all
logically.
34. Okay, well, what about
Comrade Sechenov and
ambulances
Molotov have
that have
something to gain from preventing
Were they
information
all
about this
Hamas?
terrible malfunction
162
becoming
health
known to
facilities,
the rest of the world.
1,500
No one
medical
would
and
believe that a
emergency
handful of traitors are
15 civil
responsible for
defense
the whole
centers and
thing.
headquarters.
Everybody would
54
think that
civil
Soviet
defense
robots are
vehicles.
dangerous.
Quite right. But
So in other
what
words,
conclusion should we draw from
they are
this?
purposely targeting
Only that
anybody and
hypothetically,
everybody.
Comrades
The low
Sechenov and
number that we
Molotov
see
should both have a
of
vested
massive
interest in
undercount
ending this
is
nightmare
50,000
as
Palestinians
quickly as
dead,
possible.
about 90% of which are
Is that
civilians.
right?
Yeah.
The high number we've seen
So
over
what?
We're seeing
200,000,
common
and
everyday
again about
power
90% civilians.
Instead of going to the government
This is
and
what's
having
going on.
troops sent to
US
facility
money is
30 and
funded.
26,
My tax money is
destroy
funded.
the
Your tax
hostile
money is funded.
robots, arrest
Our money
Petrov, end this
in
in
our
some
name,
way,
our
Dr.
name is
Sechenov is
funding
doing
one of
everything
the
he can
worst
to
atrocities
conceal the
of all
tragedy from
time.
everyone,
Not just in
including the
modern history,
government.
of all time. And now they're saying, look, whoever survives, and by the way, they don't care if any of them survive. Whoever survives, we're going to ethnically cleanse you, we're going to steal your land. The world needs to get together, and they need to say, Israel and the U.S., you're done. And this will inflict a tremendous amount of economic pain on the people who live in the U.S. But the fact of the matter is, there is no negotiating with this. If you can see all this evidence, see all the devastation, see all the brutality, see all the murder, see all the terrorism, and you go, more! Well, the world should all get together, completely under sanction the United States, sanction Israel, get off the dollar as the world reserve currency. I mean, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. Because it's very clear the United States is not interested in fixing this, solving this, caring about humanitarian law and international law and justice and rights. And so, for a long time, what have I told you guys? The answer is straightforward. If you had a government with a shred of morality here, you cut off the money to Israel, you cut off the weapons to Israel, you condemn them at the UN, you sanction the government officials, you bring up the war criminals on war crimes charges, and you force a peace deal on them, and you broker a deal for Palestinian liberation and sovereignty. That's always been what I've said on this issue. Lock up Netanyahu, lock up Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, lock up Yoav Gallant. I've always said this. But what's very apparent is there is a 0% chance of the U.S. ever not being totally psychopathic and brutal and backing the modern-day Nazis here. 0% chance. And so the reality is the world would have to come together and make it happen by isolating Israel and the U.S. and letting them know, if you are going to do stuff like this, then your economies are going to collapse because nobody's going to do any trade with you at all, right? And that is a storm that Israel and the U.S. could not weather. They couldn't weather. But it requires balls from the world. It requires getting off the dollar as the world reserve currency. And it implies rolling the dice on some sort of a world war. Because I wouldn't put it past the U.S. to be like, we're just going to invade everybody, right? So, but to just sit by passively and watch this is just unacceptable. Unacceptable. Not only have they reached the point of no return, they are way past the point of no return. Because you can justify and rationalize. Somebody said this the other day. There's no, there's no different words you can string together in a sentence to convey to me that it's okay to murder this many children. Just can't do it. You just can't do it. Doesn't matter how deep the Hasbara goes in propaganda and the lies and the rationalizations and the justifications. There's nothing you can do to brainwash me enough to look at this and go, yeah, this is fine. This is a reasonable policy. Fuck off forever. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you are.
Our main story tonight concerns farming. Farms are where we get our food, our metaphors about fascism, and
They can't send in the army. There are too many people. Somebody could leak intel to the enemy and then it's all over.
But only reliable men could be sent to the facility, such as the Argentum unit loyal to Sechenov. They could team up with combat robots and restore order in the blink of an eye. But I don't need to tell you about that.
But that's, I mean, crispy critters. I don't get it. Why does it have to be so complicated?
Because Dr. Sechenov can't deploy troops or combat robots without the authorization of the Politburo. On the contrary, he's doing everything he can to make sure the government doesn't know what happened. Why do you think that is?
Because his enemies would take collective away from him? Now, when everything's built and ready to go, and any asshole with a badge can run it.
Quite right. It's all done. Just fix the malfunction and press a button. Geniuses, creators, and engineers have already done their jobs. All that's left to do is enjoy the fruits of their labor.
In other words, Comrade Molotov wants to put Dr. Sechenov in jail over what happened here so he can take over the facility himself?
To be exact, he wants to lead collective.
But how can he? Everybody's going to be equal there.
Some will be more equal than others.
Well, some farmers do indeed look like that. Many of the people doing some of the hardest work on farms, hired farm labour, do not. There are roughly 1.5 million hired farm workers in the US, mostly crop workers. And federal estimates indicate that most of those are foreign born, and among them, the majority are undocumented. This has been an open secret for years now. Just watch this interview with a farm owner from 2009. Quickly take it.
How many guys do you employ? I have 22 full-time employees. Most of them Latino guys, or are they Mexican 100%? These guys, citizens, residents, they all are legal. How do you know that? Shut the camera.
We talked off camera, and a few minutes later, Myers allowed us to resume the interview.
The legal documentation is presented to me is they are legal.
Oh, they are they? I've got to say, that is not a particularly convincing bit of misdirection there. Cover-wise, it's about as effective as a camouflage outfit that just says, "not a guy" on it. The truth is, farms depend heavily on foreign-born workers to do harvesting and picking, as many crops are too delicate to be mechanized. That is why most fruits and vegetables are still harvested by hand. And by and large, American citizens states spent thousands on an advertising campaign to find US farm workers in 2021. It resulted in one job furlough and 0 hires.
No, I know that high-ranking Communist Party members will have more authority in collective than ordinary citizens, but that's fine. I mean, somebody's got to make big decisions, right?
Is that so? Why, pray tell?
Well, first off, somebody has to be responsible for carrying them out. It's not like everyone can be responsible for everything. Everyone means no one. Someone's got to take responsibility. The buck has to stop somewhere, right? And if the whole world did nothing but debate big decisions, no one would ever do anything. They'd spend all their time talking.
But what if you're wrong? You say that the entire world would never stop discussing important decisions. Collective is a collective mind. Having merged into one, mankind will instantly know everything anyone wants to express. And in this singular collective, responsibility will be determined not by fear of punishment, but by awareness.
Has anyone ever reached that level, even here in the USSR? We're not perfect, to say nothing of the rest of the world.
Absolutely right. The world may not be ready for the launch of collective. The Soviet Union's leaders understand this. That's why the party will have special discretionary authority within collective.
What's wrong with that? That's how it's always been.
The thought device is for ordinary citizens, but individuals in privileged leadership positions will have special engraved connectors that grant them a higher priority on the network.
So even the leaders will be equal. That's a good thing, right?
It would be. But collective can only be launched via the alpha connector. It's the key to everything, including assigning discretionary authority.
So Dr. Sechenov has the alpha connector right now, and Comrade Molotov wants to kick him out of the facility so he can take the alpha connector for himself.
Exactly. The number of people killed here as a result of Petrov's betrayal is a precious little concern to Comrade Molotov. He wants to take control of collective. That's why he's on his way here right now.
Crispy critters. I never liked that guy. He's always complaining about Sechenov, but I never expected shit like this from him. We gotta hurry.
Until your first bucket is filled. If you fall behind, you have to run the car like a chopper. A lot of people can't stand it because it's so hot. Sometimes it felt good.
Pretty brutal. Although the intensively clean air from the pesticides is some legendary glass half full breeze. Sure, it's hard work, but the poison breeze is nice, so it kind of balances out. The way our farm labour system works is deeply exploitative. The thing is, that is very much by design. So let's talk about farming. conditions they face, how we fail to protect them, and what we can do going forward. And let's start by acknowledging the history of farm work in America has always been rooted in exploitation, from its origins in slavery to its later evolution into sharecropping. But what you might not know is that during the New Deal, as laws were finally passed to establish some bedrock labor protections, farm workers were repeatedly and specifically excluded from. So, for instance, the 1935 protected employees' rights to join unions explicitly stated that the term employee shall not include any individual employed as an agricultural labourer. And the 1938 law, which deals with the federal minimum wage and overtime, again carved out the exception, so those provisions shall not apply to anyone employed in agriculture, which is pretty insulting, isn't it? It's like announcing your company's new anti-sexual harassment policy, but clarifying that none of it protects Jeff. Jeff is exempt, so slap his ass, twist his neck, we don't care. It is open season on Jeff. And make no mistake, the reasons for that were explicitly racist. One representative warned during debate on the minimum wage bill that you cannot put the Negro and the white man on the same basis and get away with it. That representative is actually Tucker Carlson. It turns out he's a Highlander. Now, since then, the labour force has changed. Black Americans left the sharecropping system during the Great Migration. Farmers increasingly came to rely on labourers from Mexico and other Central American nations. And over the years, leaders like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta formed the United Farm Workers. The minimum wage was expanded to include farm workers in 1978, and some states do now provide at least some access to overtime pay and collective bargaining. But the fact is, farm workers are still excluded from a lot of basic labour protections, including this major.
The child labour law in the U.S. is pretty good, except when it comes to agriculture. And then it has a big difference. U.S. law allows children to work in agriculture at far younger or unlimited hours outside of school in much more dangerous conditions than any other state. So a child can work perfectly legally any farm. That child can work serving the food, but he can work 10, 12, 14 hours.
Yeah, and that is absurd. And look, I am not saying that working in a restaurant isn't tough. Anyone thinks otherwise should be forced to serve an imperfect omelette to James Corden. But it's clearly not the same thing, is it? And this exception isn't just to let kids work on their own family's farms. There are hired children working fields all across America picking our food. Because while most jobs are off limits to kids under 14, agricultural employers may even hire children younger than 12 to work on small farms with written parental consent. We should probably go without saying that this work can be dangerous for kids. Just listen to this girl who started working in tobacco fields when she was only 12.
So this little thing is the reason everything's all jammed up? This place is nuts.
You can ascend to the surface along with the mirror.
I wanted to go get a cup of water, and I could not see to where the truck was that contained the water, and I was looking for my mom, and I couldn't find my mom. Eventually, I just fell. You don't really think about that. Like, I've never really thought that a child is really supposed to, at 12-year-olds, is supposed to have fun. Exactly. I always thought you were supposed to work.
That is
Have you infiltrated the VDNH yet, Comrade Major? The government's commission's condor has already left Moscow. They'll be here any minute now.
If the commission hasn't landed yet, that means there's still time. Just let me work in peace.
Shall I report to Dr. Sechenov that it is his requests that prevent you from working?
Yeah, you can report on how you ran away from those robots on the maglev platform instead of helping.
I am not a soldier, Comrade Major. I am doing intellectual, not menial labor. Smashing robots is your specialty.
What?
Nothing.
That's what I thought.
Error 680. Playback failed.
Which is wild. Because it's one thing to look up at a tall building and shudder thinking about the physical risk it would take to put a pane in glass.
I need to get into the exhibit. How do I open the door?
I can be opened with my multi-key error. Multi-key found.
Alternative coded models can transform their index fingers into keys. It's one of their basic functions.
Looks like you lost your multi-key.
My forearms have been torn off by miscreants. Error. The required manipulative node is missing. The unlocking function cannot be initiated.
Right. Where could she have lost her hands?
I suggest you start searching this location.
Charles, what do the special neuroconnectors for Collective look like? You know, the ones the government is supposed to get.
According to Dr. Sechenov's plan, bureaucrats and civil servants will receive fakes. Only the scientists will receive real connectors with discretionary authority.
The boss is going to try to deceive the government? That's crazy. How do you know that?
Where did you get your neuropolymer glove from, comrade?
What, you mean yourself? I got you from Dr. Sechenov.
Exactly.
Hold on. You mean he gave me his own glove?
The fate of his life's work depends on the success of your mission.
Please proceed. Proceed to information. System information recorded. Welcome to the DEI conference. I don't understand.
So, what will it be, Major? Please select the desired procedure.